Welcome back to our Canvas Basics module. In the last few lessons, we looked at creating our context, drawing lines, and then creating paths, and then filling those paths with fill and fill stat, and so on and so forth. And we created two little triangles like this, one which was filled in with red color. So we've taken a look at all of those things. So now let's look at circles. So as you know, we can't really draw circles with straight lines, so we need a specific function for circles. But there isn't a specific function for circles in Canvas. So what can we do then? Well, there is one for arcs though. So even though we don't have a function for circles as such, we do have one for drawing arcs. As you know, arcs are parts of a circle. Small arcs make a circle, am I right? And a completed arc is a circle. So that's how we'll be creating our circle here. So we'll be completing an arc so it actually looks like a circle. So as usual, let's start with our begin and close path. Since a circle is actually a path, okay, so we've created our begin and close paths, and within this we'll have to write our arc code. So for an arc, it's going to be ctx.arc. So we have to call the arc function to draw an arc. And then inside that function, within that call, you have to give 5 different parameters. Okay. So in your line2 function, we gave 2 different parameters which were values for x and y positions. Am I right? So here we need to give 5 different parameters which are compulsory, and there is a 6th optional parameter. So let me tell you what the values are inside it. So the first parameter is going to be the x, the second is the y. So this is the center of the circle. Okay, so the x and y values of the center of the circle. Okay, and then the third parameter is going to be the radius of the circle, and then the fourth and fifth are going to be radians. Okay, so radian 1, radian 2 of the circle, and finally we're going to have a 6th parameter that can either be false or true, and then we can end this with a semicolon. You must have studied about radians at school. If not, that's okay. I'll just explain that as quick as possible. So as you know, a circle starts from degree 0 and then ends at degree 360. That's how it forms a full circle. Am I right? So that's in degrees, but since our canvas can't accept degrees, we have to convert those degrees into radians. Okay? So for radians, so this is how radians work. So 0 degrees would be equal to 0 radians. Okay, but if it were to be 360 degrees, which is what ends a circle, then in radians that would be 2 pi. Okay, so 2 into pi radians. Okay, and then 180 degrees would be pi radians. Alright, so that's how degrees to radians conversions work in mathematics. Okay, so and that's what we'll be using in our code as well. To start off, for a circle is going to be 0, and then to end off it's going to be 2 into pi. So like this. But there is a problem here. To denote a pi, you can't just write pi in here, because then JavaScript won't know what you're referring to, because pi in here is not anything. It's not even a variable because we haven't declared pi as a variable. So to denote a mathematical pi, you'll have to use the math function. Okay, JavaScript's built-in math function, which has a lot of mathematical functions and consonants and everything, and then say math.pi. So when you say math.pi, your browser will automatically know that you're referring to the pi value of max. Okay, so there is a 6th optional value, this value. It can be either false or true, where false is the default value. Alright, so if you give false, the arc would be drawn in the clockwise direction, so like this, clockwise direction. But if you give true, the arc would be drawn in the anti-clockwise direction. So as I told you, false is the default, so the default is clockwise direction. This value won't be necessary for a circle because you'll get a full circle regardless of whether you draw it in the clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction. But when you draw arcs, when you draw semicircles or quarter circles, in that case you might want them to be drawn in a particular direction, So in that case, this particular value would come in very handy. So x, y, this is the radius, this is the start radian, and this is the end radian. For circle, it's usually 0 to 2 pi. And then finally, you have to specify the direction of the drawing, which is anti-clockwise or clockwise, where clockwise is the default. That is, false is the default. So let's place all our values of our circle here. So to start off, let me say I want the center to be at 300 and then 150. And then let me say I want my radius to be 50. Okay, so 50 pixels is my radius, and my x and y values are at 300 pixels and 150 pixels each. That's my center position, and I want a circle, so the radians are going to be from 0 to 2 pi, and then I want it to be at the default false, which is clockwise direction. Okay, so finally, right now we only have an outline, just like we did for our line. We only have an outline right now, outline for our circle. Our context hasn't drawn the circle yet, so we can say the same function, ctx.stroke, to let our context know that it has to draw along the outline. Okay, so let's save this and let's look at our output now. Look here, we have a nice little circle right here, and if you actually calculate it, you'd probably know that it's 300, 150. This is the center. The center would be 300, 150, and the radius would be, that is from the center to the outer circumference, is going to be 50 pixels, and it started at 0 and then it ended at 360 in the clockwise direction, which formed our circle. As you know, Canvas also lets us fill colors inside our shapes. Okay, in this case, our circle is also a shape, so we can, instead of giving ctx.stroke, we're going to say ctx.fill, which would fill our circle with black color. Let's see. Let me refresh. Red color. Why is that? Well, that's because we already gave a fill style right here. Did you see here? We gave a fill style that said fill style has to be red in color, so there is no default now. But we can change it. For our circle, we can change it and make our fill color into something like, fill style into something like green. So what happens is, once this particular path is finished, and then this particular style value will be taken up for our circle the second time round. Let's see if that works. See, our triangle is in red color and our circle is in green color. So that's how you fill your circles. Now, by changing, let's try changing these values. By changing these values from 0 to 2 pi to 0 to pi, remove this 2 into. So by changing it to 0 to pi, we can create a half circle. And I've given false. That means the half circle would be drawn in the clockwise direction. Okay, let me check. Let me save this first. Let me check. See, we have a half circle, but it's down here because the 0 starts from here and 180 ends here, and we are drawing in the clockwise direction, so we have a semicircle that's inverted. But if we want a not inverted semicircle, in that case we'll have to say true, so the arc would be drawn in anti-clockwise direction. So let's see. See, it was drawn in anti-clockwise direction, so it started here and then ended here in this direction. So that's how you can change the direction of your drawing to achieve different results. So we've looked at different parts to create different shapes, and then we looked at arcs and circles and then lines. So I have just scratched the surface of Canvas actually, but this would be more than enough to create our project. But I have to say that there's a lot more to Canvas than this. But our priority here is to create our project. So I've just covered the topics that we need for our project. Okay, thank you.